Backhanded it up the boards. The Flyers were waiting for it, but he held on to it to go the other way.
Flyers penetrate, drop fast, drop off to the point, into the corner to Eklund. Straight out in front to Propp. Shot! Score!
Pressure player. Talk about a player who has really had a great playoff. Brian Propp, nice give and go, and when he did, he went right up the alley. The quick shot high up into the penthouse. And we have really been getting down on the Flyers' power play, and it has not worked very well at all. But you only need
time
one.
for it.
And we only need one, and this is when they get it. Brian Propp, what a play.
Hey everybody, it's Isaiah. Just reminding you that FlyersNittyGritty.com and the O&B Puckcast are brought to you by Summit Public Adjusters. Hey, do you have damage to your home? Not sure who to call? We suggest that you call Summit Public Adjusters before your insurance company. Dealing with your insurance company can be very stressful. Let Summit take the stress out of the claims process. From storm damage to your roof, to toilet overflows, to broken pipes and fires, Summit gets you the most money for your repairs. So next time Mother Nature leaves you in need of repairs, call Summit Public Adjusters at 215-752-0560 or visit summitpublicadjusters.com. Licensed in PA and New Jersey.
And we are back. It is Isaiah. Welcome to the O&B Puckcast, episode number 259, as we begin our 9th season. And just want to tell our listeners right out of the gate, thank you so much. The Flyers season's over, of course. We reviewed it last time with Bill Meltzer, and we got a lot for you tonight. The lotteries happened. We have a Flyers head coaching search. We are affiliated with a new website. And, of course, the Lehigh Valley Phantoms are playing. The building has a new name, so much. So let's go to the panel. Always to my left, Shep B. What's your opening thoughts for tonight as we come back here?
Well, I got bombarded by, emails, texts after the draft and how the Flyers suck. And, of course, like they had any say whatsoever in how these balls were going to land. But I'm sure we'll delve into it, and it should be interesting. But oh wow, we've had some very good games to watch on hockey, yeah, and especially the ones you can stay up late too. So can't wait to get to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And back from his European sojourn for his work assignment, the great Dan Silver. Welcome back, friend.
Thanks. Yeah, they had to roll me in the house after all the pasta and wine in Italy. It was pretty nice. And then I come back and I got to be subjected to that draft lottery nonsense. But I'm sure we'll get into all that later. And it's great to be back and talking to you guys and everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So right before we introduce our guests, just a reminder, we're brought to you by FlyersNittyGritty.com, Jim South Street, Summit Adjusters. And you might want to check us out also. We are linked at hockeyhotstove.com. Like Bill Meltzer mentioned last time, you just go on hockeyhotstove.com, scroll down the page, and you'll see our logo. It's a little out of focus right now, but Bill's working on that. So just a reminder about that. So without any further delay, from Sirius XM, author of 11 books. He's with Locked On Flyers, and he has a new book called Game Winners. He wants us to mention that. You can get it on Amazon right now. In fact, pause the show, go to Amazon, get Game Winners. And Russ Cohen joining us right now. We'll appreciate it. How you doing, Russ?
Thanks, Isaiah. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
So here's my opening statement about the draft lottery. I tweeted this. I said, most everybody is going to be annoyed by the draft lottery with the results. Really, the only fans of teams that get the number one pick are the only ones that are ever happy. Everybody else feels like they were screwed. And that's what happened. And that's what happens every draft lottery.
I think the tough part, Russ, is when halfway through it, it looked like they had like an 25% chance. I forget what it was.
I think it was like 21, something like that.
Something. And that you started getting your hopes up even more. And then they pulled the rug out from underneath you. That was
here was something I said, and I just said this not because I'm a mathematician, but just out of historic draft lotteries and just covering the draft all this time, right? My basic feeling was Flyers were in fourth. They were never going to end up in fourth after the weighted draft lottery. I knew that. Like, that's just the way this lottery seems to work. And, it worked against them. But, hey, the Bruins, it worked further against them. There were some teams that got bumped down even further. So, it happens. But they are going to get a good player. Like, I think it's kind of interesting, and I understand it. Look, I'm a fan of tortured fan base. I'm a fan of bad teams with tortured fan bases, the New York Jets. The Mets are way more successful than the Jets. But still, there's been a lot of torture over the years. So I understand that mentality, right? But I don't quite understand the mentality of, we're going to get a good player, but not a great player. It's like, okay, you don't really know that yet. Like, even if I say I don't think the guy's going to be great, doesn't mean he won't be. It's up to the guy. And so, like, I don't think you could walk away with just from the draft lottery. This is not the NFL draft. Like, these guys aren't 22 years old. There's not a finished product here. Yeah. So, like, I think that's the important thing that everybody should walk away from is it depends on the player. It depends on the player team development. It depends on a lot of other things, staying healthy, getting stronger, getting faster. Like, this is like nobody walks away from the baseball draft saying that they got screwed or it's really bad because you don't really know. Now, the NHL draft, those players that play in Canada get a lot more press than minor league baseball players, right? For the most part, except for the top ones. So people have a little bit better idea. But, like, name me the last time, like, Phillies fans were so up in arms about even a first-round pick. I mean, I could probably name you one.
JD Drew.
JD Drew, maybe Mickey Moniak. That's about it. Most of the time, there's not this, craziness.
No, I agree. It's just, I think part of the dynamic, Russ, is that there's so many Flyers fans who think about the ineptitude since 2012, for the most part, really hasn't, right? A lot of drafting mistakes, development. No.
Oh, yeah.
We all agree about that. And then to get the opportunity, they were not going to tank. Okay. But once they started going downhill and they more or less said, okay, we're kind of in season tanking, which is I can get on board with. It's the only kind of tanking I can get on board with. It's not going well. You tried to, advance. Right. It's not working. Okay. Now we're going to do what we need to do as part of our plans. And then they started winning games and people were upset. And okay, they got to fourth. As it turns out, it wouldn't have really mattered. They would have been better off winning a few more games than they did. So you just don't know. And I think it's that frustration of being pulled in different directions within the fan base. And the whole thing is a frustration that is caused by it's a cap. It's a cap has screwed up this league more than anything, and it keeps really
or
great
saved
margins.
it. I mean, you could look at it. I'm going to make this argument. I understand that the Flyers were better when there was no cap, but then they weren't. And Ilya Bryzgalov was a perfect example of that. So things didn't last either forever, even in the uncapped world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but they couldn't get their way out of it the way they used to in the past. All I'm saying is this: the cap has led to a point where we have really viable market teams that can contribute a lot of revenue to the league and sales and merchandise, the whole 9 yards, and they're being kept down by this artificial attempt at parity, which is, I think, overall just a setup for the discussion point where maybe a luxury tax would be better.
Okay, I mean, I'm not going to get into that because it would be like two accountants shouting at each other, and I don't think that's a good show. But I will say this: better management, better drafting development, better trades, make better teams. It just does.
I agree. Yeah,
I'll add to that. You can't, as you've seen, as some of these owners in the past, and I'll go back to, I guess, Quebec and even Winnipeg and stuff. They don't care about winning. It's just about it or building a team. They care about the dollars and whether or not they're getting it from, ticket sales or whatever, or if the league is, if indeed the league is subsidizing them. That's fine. But if you don't have a cap, I think you're fostering more of that if you don't have a cap, because at least with the cap, you're getting requirements of a floor. There's more structure in the league. Now, I totally get it if you want to add a luxury tax to that, and then that gets split with the small market teams. I'm fine with that if you want to go that route. But I don't think you can have a very successful NHL league in the markets that they have right now. I think you would be putting undue financial pressure on some of them. And they'll overspend, like Nashville. They'll overspend just to compete. We've proven that with them in an offer sheet.
Yeah, no question. But what's uncapped? Player development, front office, coaching, all of that's uncapped.
Right. Well,
and that's where the teams don't want to spend. Exactly.
But that's where the smart ones do spend, because that's where you can be ahead of other teams by spending more, being better, being smarter. That's all part of it. You got to do it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to step in here and I'm going to steer this because, like Russ said, this is a conversation that is a tough one to have. And right out of the gate, what I want to do, Dan, is I want to ask you, or you could banner that around with Russ, about what kind of player we're looking at. The Flyers finished 6th overall in the draft. That's where we're going to draft in the first round if they don't make a trade or something like that. It's the Islanders, San Jose, Chicago, Utah, Nashville, the Flyers, Boston, and we don't really care after that. Although the Flyers will have a pick in the 20s, or maybe 2 picks in the 20s, depending on what Edmonton does from there. So, Dan, why don't you kind of pick that up?
Yeah, obviously it was kind of a disappointing lottery night where first we find out that Michkov's not a Calder finalist, and then we find out that it kind of was a rug pull, because the way they did the lottery, they did 3 lottery balls, and after the first 3 balls, the Flyers actually jumped up to a 20% chance of getting that first pick. Yeah. So it was actually very exciting. They really only had a 12% chance before the lottery started. Then it goes up to 20%. So Flyers fans are excited. I was excited. Come on, number 4, number 6 were the balls we needed. And of course it goes to the Islanders. And then we don't even have a chance to get the second pick. So then we're rooting for one of the teams that's ahead of us. So we don't drop down to number 6. And then we do drop down to number 6. So it's kind of a disappointing evening. But here's the positive spin, is that because the Flyers were number 4, meant that they couldn't drop any lower than 6. Yeah. Right. And some people think that there are distinct top 6 players in this draft. It's probably not that cut and dry. But if the Flyers had won that game against Buffalo and had been like number 6, then they would have dropped down to number 8. So in some ways, it's still a positive that we ended up 4, because we can't go any lower than 6. So if you look at who's on the board in this draft, and Russ obviously has a lot of knowledge and insight into this, but from what I've seen, it looks like, let's say the Islanders take Matthew Schaefer, the defenseman, and the Sharks take Michael Misa. The Blackhawks, I've seen a lot of people kind of link them to Porter Martone to get like a Tom Wilson type winger that can play with Connor Bedard. And then there's kind of some uncertainty. And I think that there's probably uncertainty with all these picks, right? But I'm just saying the next 3 players, which the Flyers, if they want, are guaranteed to get one of them, are 3 guys who have played center and who are thought of as centers. And those guys are Caleb Denoye and James Higgins and Anton Frondell. So you could say that if the draft goes Schaefer, Misa, Martone, that one of those three players the Flyers would have their choice of. Now, we know that things happen, and there's other players like Brady Martin, who's one of the more physical centers in the draft, who's a guy that maybe the Flyers will have interest in, right? But, I don't have any insight into which of these guys the Flyers have a lot of interest in. Quite honestly, Danny Briere's done a much better job, and Russ would have more thoughts and knowledge than me. But to me, he's done a much better job on keeping things under wraps than some other GMs.
I agree with that.
And other teams. So I don't think we really know who they want. But the bottom line is that they will have, if they want, their choice, that they will get at least one of Denoyer, Higgins, Frondell, or if Martone drops. So I don't know which one of those guys, but all three of those guys are kind of thought of as potential second line centers in the NHL. Maybe the upside is there for, Frondell to be like a Barkov type, or Higgins to be a Barzal type. Denoyer, I don't know what a comparable would be, but he's, pretty good center. So the good news is that they are guaranteed, if they want, to get at least one of those guys. They have the draft capital, by the way. Let's say the Flyers really want Caleb Denoyer, and they think that Utah is going to take him at number 4. Well, they could call Utah and say, hey, we'll trade you one of our other first-round picks to move up 2 spots. Utah still gets who they want. The Flyers jump ahead of Nashville and get the guy they want. So there's a lot of possibilities. I'm interested to see, what Russ's top 6 are and who he thinks the Flyers would do well with. But the good news is that they should end up with one of these top 6 players, and likely one of the centers if they want.
Yeah. So, all right. A lot to break down. Brady Martin could be in the top 5 before all this is done. So that's true that when you said that could happen. And so there are going to be centers, but then you have to decide who's a center. So like Michael Misa just started playing center, right? I look at Michael Misa as a more talented, but I use this as an example. When Travis Konecny was on the Ottawa 67s, he was a center. I see so many of these guys that listed as centers, and I remember saying on the radio, Travis Konecny is not going to be a center, and he's not a center. I don't think Michael Misa will be a center. Cutter Gauthier, the Flyers wanted to turn into a center. Remember, he was playing center in college. What is he playing now in the NHL? Left wing.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have to be careful with that too. So I don't look at Misa like as a long-term center. I do look at him as a long-term tremendous player, but I think James Higgins is a better center. And I don't have a problem with him being 5'11". This is different than Jack Hughes. Like Jack Hughes was 150 or 60 pounds. Higgins is already more built than that. And I think we'll come back after another year, kind of like what Lane Hudson did when I saw him get built up. And then I was like, all right, they got to steal Montreal because we already knew what else he could do. And I think Higgins can do that too. I looked up something with Higgins because, everybody gets very picky with these top players. Misa got killed last year because they thought he'd be the number 1. They're like, oh, he had a horrible year. Remember, you heard it. Bad year. I thought he had a good Memorial Cup. I thought he was good. I still thought Misa was good. I just knew he probably wasn't going to be the first overall pick. So this year, he scores a bucket load of points, more than I really care to really give too much credit to. But then he only had 3 points in 4 playoff games. So, what am I going to look at with that? I had scouts tell me, hey, what didn't look great in the playoffs. I have to look at some of those playoff tapes, video, because I haven't yet. But he didn't come through with a lot of points. So then James Higgins gets ripped for only being a point-a-game guy in college as a freshman, which is really hard to do. Now, if you put him up against Macklin Celebrini, okay, Celebrini's better. Nobody's arguing that fact. But when you put it up against really almost anybody else from, let's say the NTDP, it's a tremendous year. Boston College was just disappointing, but he scored a big goal to get him into the next round, and then he scored a game-winning goal. And it's I looked him up. He only had 2 games twice where he didn't have a point the whole year. So the consistency was there. So again, and everybody was like, well, he's being carried by Ryan Leonard or whatever. I mean, Ryan Leonard's got 1 goal in 12, 15 games. He's struggling. So my basic point here is with James Higgins is that he's played center the whole time. I've watched this guy behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, and I really like him. And if the Flyers were lucky enough to have him drop, I would take him without hesitation, because I don't think he's a top line center, but I think he's a second line center. Could he be a top line center? Sure, because like nobody was going to say Lane Hudson was going to be a top pairing defenseman in his draft year. Nobody. But now he is. And now nobody's not saying it, right? So that's what could happen and how things can change, the trajectory. But so I look at Porter Martone. Hey, if he's here, you got to really think about it. To me, if Chicago takes him over the couple of the other guys, hey, it's a team need. That's their choice. But then the Flyers are getting a break because then they have a better selection of centers. And I think that's the way the fans should look at it. And so now if I look at Caleb Denoyer, really like him, got to look at how that league is. So I just throw the points out of the window in the queue. But I see what his talent is. And one of the things I think he does that will translate the next level is he can really accelerate with players on him, with defenders on him. He could still get his shot off. He could still get to the net at times. That's good. 62% on faceoffs. That's a little inflated from the league, but it's good. On the backside, though, 17% D-zone coverage. Like Higgins is 26 or 28% D-zone coverage. I got these all from Instat. In college, playing against 23-year-olds. Denoyer 17% in the queue. That's got to get better. So you have to look at this, or fans should look at this too and say, it's not all about size here, because it's not like James Higgins is 5'10". He's 5'11", or even 5'9". He's 5'11". He's going to get stronger. And if you watch him skate, he's a dynamic skater. So is Misa. And Denoyer is a terrific skater too. Hey, if you want to draft Denoyer because you're worried and you take him for size, okay, he's going to be a good player, but you might be losing out on that extra high end that someone like Higgins is going to have, or someone like Misa might have as a top line winger, maybe not as a top line center. So that's the trade-off here. How safe do you want to play
it? Chef, yeah.
Quick question for these three centers that could be in play in the mix here. Which one? I mean, obviously they need to play a little more physical. They got pushed around a lot this year, this past season, the Flyers. So which one do you think, if you're going to go towards that, leaning towards getting more physical play, is that more Higgins or is that more Frondell? Sorry. It's
more Frondell. He's averaging like 1.17 hits a game. So it's definitely more Frondell. I just wrote an article about Frondell on my website, NHLDraftBuzz.com. So yeah, that's more Anton Frondell, because besides having the two-way game, which I really like, he's got a great shot. I didn't care that he was 3 points in 4 games, something like that in the U18s. He did everything else I expect that guy to do. Sweden had a lot of players on that team. Like he's a younger guy on that team. So I didn't have like these amazing expectations like he would be their best player and I could be like, yeah, Frondell, that's it. No, but he did exactly what I thought he would do. And he was physical too. And so, yeah, and Denoyer could be physical too. So if that's the way they want to go, hey, that's fine. My feeling is always this. When you're drafting these guys, if you're drafting for physicality, you're still going to wait a couple of years for these guys. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you're getting immediate physical help. You always have to be careful about that. Like, hey, we're not physical now, so let's draft a physical guy. Okay, but that physical guy is still going to take a little while to get there. None of these guys we're talking about will play in the NHL this year or should play in the NHL this year. So I wouldn't be talking about any of these guys playing. But again, if you're looking for physical, like Dan said, you might be looking at Brady Martin because he had a hell of a U18. But again, I wouldn't do it. I would steer a little clear of that and say, it's a little bit of recency bias. The Flyers already did that years ago with Scott Lawton. Good player, nice NHLer. Probably got drafted a bit higher than he should because of a really good U18. You got to watch out for the recency bias. And Jake O'Brien's going to be in this mix too, because he has a really high floor and does everything well and will definitely play center in the NHL. The question is it going to be second line center or third line center? Most likely second. But that's the thing. I mean, so again, you have to look at the rest of the pieces in the organization before you make this pick. It's not best player available, because best player available is best player on the Flyers board. And that player and that board is going to be different than Chicago's board, Boston's board, everything else. So that's why best player available is a generic term to me, because it's really like I remember somebody tweeted that to me. I don't call it X, sorry. Somebody tweeted it to me and was just like, well, they'll take best player available. I'm like, according to whom? And they were like,
it's subjective.
Oh, the scouts. And I'm like, okay. But those scouts, like there's different scouts in different leagues and they all have different opinions and then they all hash it out at the table and it is very subjective. And that's my basic point is it's a subjective term. But as Dan pointed out, and I'll just say it in plain terms, you wait and see who falls.
Yep.
Like look, Michkov fell to them, right? Don't use Michkov as an example as to what you might get in this draft because that's not happening. That happened because of his contract in Russia, and people were worried about would it take 4 years or 5 years for this guy to come over because that's the way it looked, right? So nobody doubted that guy's talent. But that's what I'm saying. Don't look like for that to happen because that's probably not going to happen. But I do think 80% chance Schaefer goes first. Hey, Higgins is from Long Island. Should that be the reason the Islanders draft him first? No, they should draft him because he's a great player. And they might. But I'm just saying, the minute one thing changes in that top five, it jumbles up everything. You saw what happened with the Shane Wright draft. I was sitting right across with SiriusXM. I was right across from Seattle and the Devils. And the minute things started to change, the Devils were like next up, and there was chaos at that table. And I knew they weren't taking Shane Wright at that point. I didn't know that before the draft, but I knew the way I watched them going through their draft books and having conversations that all of a sudden that had completely changed. And it completely changed the way that first 5 picks went. And the same thing could happen in this draft.
Yeah, well, I think there's been a bias, like with Schaefer, Misa, Higgins, Martone, and Frondell. And the conversation, real or otherwise, or imagined, is that now we're at like a third tier after that. You have Schaefer and Misa, although some people might put Higgins in there. But roughly speaking, the first 5 represent 1 or 2 tiers, depending on who you talk to.
To me, it's just one. It's not. They're not getting a third tier player. No, I firmly fight against that one. I don't believe that that's the case. But I really do think it's the first 4, and then it's the next tier. That's the way I feel.
Gotcha. I mean, to me, I look for traits. When you're building a team, and like you said, everybody's going to have a different player on their board. To me, Frondell has a lot of traits that would really suit the Flyers, and not just size. The fact that he already plays a two-way game, he's playing against men, he's a good shot, and he's not a reluctant shooter. And the Flyers have a lot of deferential players on the board, even though we have Mr. Tippett who misses the net more than he hits it, and Forster can be that way as well. But still, that's why that's the kind of guy I like. Brady Martin comes out of nowhere in our eyes. What's that all about? You said he plays a physical game.
Yeah, he plays a physical game. He plays the position well. He's got a good shot. He skates well. I mean, I think I have him 12th or 13th on my list as a ranking. So it doesn't come out of nowhere, but it just comes out of, hey, Brady Martin looked like he was like just, playing his best hockey in the U18s. And so that's the last thing everybody sees, right? So that's a part of it. With Frondell, and I'm not going to ruin my own article, but I will say that I've watched him for more than just like this year, his draft year. And I listened to all the stuff earlier in the year. Hey, he's not looking good enough. He's not this. Like, I'm on a lot of draft meetings with elite prospects, and I get to hear what the European scouts say about him, and they're more picky than anybody. And so they were really picky about Frondell early on, And then there was a time when I want to say maybe around January where his season started to change. And maybe it was because of his age, it started to kick in, and then his scoring started to pick up. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, now we're starting to see Anton Frondell. And, he might have the best wrist shot in the draft as far as like just being a bullet. It's so good. And so, yeah, like that, his hits per game, I'm really impressed with. I watched him, in the U18s, hitting guys when he had to. I watched his two-way play. I watched him accelerate. Maybe he didn't get goals on these plays, but I watched plays that would be scoring plays at any level, and he could do that. So if the Flyers took Anton Frondell over some of those other names, I wouldn't be upset because I have him ranked 5th, I think. So, that's my feeling on him. I don't think there's no way I can call that guy a 3rd-tier player because, he's playing against men now. And so, he can't be a 3rd-tier player because he's not playing in junior hockey. He's not, he's not even – it's not like, you could have said that about Cale Makar. Hey, he's a 3rd-tier player. And I'm sure somebody said it somewhere in his draft year because he was playing in the AJHL.
Mm-hmm.
How's Cale Makar now?
Yep.
I remember at the World Juniors, Cale Makar was like an extra for a little while. He was an extra. I interviewed him at the end of the World Juniors. I'm like, hey, your position changed here. And he kind of laughed because he had to prove himself.
I hear you, Dan.
So, Russ, this year the Flyers have just stockpiled picks. They've got the Edmonton pick. They've got the Colorado pick in the first round. They've got 4 picks in the second round that I think are all in the first half of the second round. We've heard a lot of people speculate on, how deep this draft is. So now that, we're a month and a half to 2 months away from the draft, what are your thoughts on what is the depth towards, the mid 20s and the early 30s where the Flyers have these other picks?
Yeah, I think the depth is definitely good in the 20s. The 30s, once you get to the 30s, you're really in the second round. And, this draft, once you get past 45, you're starting to take players that, well, I like this. I don't love that. But, this is really good. We're going to go with this. And you're doing a little bit more guessing and more projecting. That's the way this draft is going to be. 1999 was a really bad draft for producing a lot of long-term NHLers. This draft might rival that. We'll see. It's up to the players to kind of, change the narrative on that. But if I'm the Flyers, do I walk into draft day with 3 first-rounders? No, I definitely would trade one. I'd be trying for the next 2 months to trade that and an extra second and something for a player, an RFA, all that stuff. And there's all that goes on. I would be trying that. They're not going to be able to trade into the top 2 or 3 or 4. And for people thinking that Utah might trade their pick, why? They're a brand new franchise. They're going to show off this pick like nobody's business. They're not trading down. They're not. Yeah. And they're not going to do it. I don't believe. So you look at it and you say, all right, could the Flyers use that extra first rounder to trade up a little bit more in the first round? Sure. Yeah. Could they get 16 instead of 22? Maybe. But it has to be for a player that you think shouldn't even be on the board anymore. Because if not, it's not worth expending the energy on it because it's the assets. Because at the end of the day, the amount of picks that the Flyers have, normally you say, hey, just got to get 2. They got to get more than 2 out of this draft, especially for the amount of picks that they have in the first and second rounds. One of those second rounders, I'd be trading to somebody for a next year's second rounder. That's what I would be doing for a team that doesn't have a second rounder. I'd be shopping that. I wouldn't want 4 second rounders in this draft. I just wouldn't. But again, they're in a spot where, I talked about LJ Mooney as an example. He was tremendous in the U18s. He's been on the NTDP. He's a smaller guy. He's 5'7". Now, if the Flyers still have 4th, second round picks and they take him with the 3rd or 4th second round pick because he is pretty dynamic, I said he's a great guy to have in camp because he'll push everybody in camp because they'll look at this guy and be like, the coach will be like, look what this guy's doing against you. He's 5'7". He's scoring on you. He's making you look stupid. He might make the NHL. He's got a lot of jam even for a smaller guy, which is surprising because Nate Gerby was smaller. What was he, 5'5"? Yeah, he's not like that, but he's a dynamic skater. But I'm just making a point. You got 4 second rounders. You might throw one on a guy like that because again, team speed, that's always a good thing. So if they do that, then I think they'll take some gambles in the second, but they don't have to gamble in the first. They've got all this equity to do well in the first, even if they only make 2 first-round picks. So just, make it the right ones, make it for things that you feel like you're going to need. Look at everybody who you have and how they're developing, and then make that decision.
Yeah, Chef, I wanted to throw this out there. A wild card question. What about the idea the Flyers might trade this pick to a team like Anaheim, who has to pay McTavish and is worried about offer sheets and things like that, might include that? I mean, that would be my target. Not so much for an offer.
Sure. I mean, if you want to try and get McTavish or you want to try and get Marco Rossi, that's fine. The only problem is this. For one thing, Anaheim has money, so they could match it. It's not like they don't have money. I don't think they're going to be that tight to the cap.
No.
So that's one thing. For another thing is, like, McTavish hasn't fully proven himself. So are you going to give up all these assets and have to sign him to a long-term deal immediately? Because you got one more year until you have to do that anyhow. You're going to be pretty sure. Like me, I would rather have Rossi over McTavish because now that he's healthy, I think he's more proven right now in the NHL than McTavish. But again, am I trading the 6th pick for that? No, I'm not doing it because would I trade the 20th? Yeah. I'll give you, if it's the 20th, 21st, 26th. Yeah. I'll give you that pick.
You'd have to put a player, roster player.
Yeah, you want that and you want a second? Okay. I'll do that too. You want to do that? That's fine. Remember, the Islanders got 2 seconds for Devin Taves. I mean, how does that look for Colorado? Like, I wouldn't give up the 6th overall that easy. And that's not, you know what I'm saying? McTavish isn't proven enough to me. I don't think he could be a number 1 center. I feel like he probably is a number 2 center, but second line center, but we don't really fully know with him yet. And I like him. You know, Zegras is out there. Zegras has his own issues. You know, it's like,
it's just putting the team together. Look, if Lachenko is in one spot and you had a guy like McTavish, more size, things like that, it kind of meshes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it. No, and I mean, if that's your 1-2, it's pretty good if Luchenko's a 1. If he's not, then you got 2 2s. Okay. I mean, it's not like you can't get by with that. I think you can get by with that. But again, to do that and then to have to sign McTavish on a long-term deal would almost be like when they traded for Jamie Drysdale. Let's say there wasn't all this extra runway with him and they had to sign him to a long-term deal, and they did. And let's say, you know, last year he was his first year of an 8-year deal or a 7-year deal. How would you have felt about that?
Well, obviously not great.
Right. So but there's that. That is a possibility. That's a possibility too, right? That's what you have to look at that. So that's why I don't trade the 6th for that. No.
Gotcha.
Isaiah, you're okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, go ahead.
Shep, you go first, and Dan will get right to you.
Oh, all right. So I like I said, after this draft and, you know, Michkov not getting my phone was blowing up, emails, stuff. I got a typewritten letter of everything. So, but this one's from like one of our listeners, Kelly. He talks about last year, Anaheim went off the board, so to speak, with Beckett, Seneke at 3rd overall. Which prospect do you think could drop into that top 5 and possibly push one of the guys we just talked about back into that, you know, to where we would have a better opportunity to pick?
Yeah, it's Brady Martin or Jake O'Brien.
Okay.
It's one of those guys. One team could just fall in love with them and say, that's our guy. Yeah. And once that happens, then that happens. The thing about Michkov is I had him 3rd. So I had Lane Hudson 1st, Macklin Celebrini 2nd, Michkov 3rd, Dustin Wolf 4th, Cutter Gauthier 5th. That's what I had.
So do you think, in a little quick follow-up there, do you think that, like, if maybe like Utah or Nashville sees that their guy is still on the board that they're looking at, because like you said, everything's subjective, is there a chance that they can make a deal with the Flyers and maybe push back knowing that the Flyers would pick somebody else anyway? Or, you know,
maybe. I mean, but what if Barry Trotz calls Briere and says, hey, give me 2 of your seconds and I'll let you move up? I wouldn't do it.
No. Even in this draft, you said anything past?
No, because I'm still in a good spot.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not doing that because now I'm limiting what my success in this draft might be. And I'm still taking a chance, right? I mean, that's the thing. Okay. I'm not trading for Celebrini. I'm not trading for Crosby. I'm not. So it's like those guys are on a different level.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
Makes sense.
All right, Dan?
No, Isaiah, I was just asking Are you suggesting that we trade the number 6 pick for one of those players or some other kind of thing involving that pick with the offer sheets?
The offer sheet, if you're offering that pick, I mean, the offer sheet's got nothing to do with it.
Right.
I mean,
Offer sheet's out the window because Danny doesn't seem like he wants to do an offer sheet.
So I'm just trying to clarify. So Isaiah, you were saying trade the number 6 pick for Mason McTavish or Marco Rossi or something like that is what you were suggesting.
Yeah, I was just saying, is that something they would consider? I'm not saying it's something I want to do. It's just like I just feel like the Flyers want to do something and get a young player with Michkov. And they want to do it sooner rather than later. And this might be their best avenue to do it, even though in the long term, it may be ill-advised. But it wouldn't shock me that if they did something along that lines and they can justify that the guy's been in the league for, 3 years and he's getting better every year, it seems like, and he's just about to hit his stride. But does he have a ceiling that would make it worth it? And how would that compare to the upside of the players who are going to draft, knowing that there's a lot of risk with development and injuries and things like that with the kids that they're looking at right now. So
you know what the other fly in the ointment is there for Anaheim? We don't know who the coach is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Torch Jr. didn't work out. Yeah,
I think we all want
that could change the trajectory. Like they're probably Verbeek's probably not going to make a move until he knows who the coach is and who he says he needs on this roster to pull off his. The next level because Anaheim's close. Like Anaheim's not that far away from being a playoff team. So that next coach is going to have something to say about who stays and who goes too.
Yeah, I would think so. Dan, you want to follow up with that?
No, I was just saying, I think we all want it to be a exciting summer in Flyerland. And if I think we all kind of need to keep trusting in what they're doing. So I'd be open to them moving that pick and seeing what they can do. And I think the expectation with the front office is that they're going to do things this summer that are going to hopefully propel them towards being a playoff team. And next summer, when all of that cap money comes free, they're going to do even more. So I think we're just kind of hoping that it's going to be a exciting summer ahead, that they'll do some creative things. Danny in the past has done creative things like what he did with the Provorov trade. I know that's fairly far in the past, but he's shown the ability to do things like that. We've got all these draft picks this year. I think the hope is that they'll figure something out. I'm kind of interested to see, we will, if we keep that pick, we will get a good player. There could be some machinations that happen, like them trying to move up a pick or two, moving down. I think it's, I read someone was talking about how people are always saying, oh, I hope there's trades, in the first round of the draft. And usually it doesn't happen, but I think someone was saying that this year they thought that there actually was the possibility for that just because of a couple different factors. So, it's
there's something to that. I think there could be, but I'm always I'm not trading down guy. I mean, I'm just, Z Bouillon should have been that example before they even did it, but they still did it. And so it's like, no, don't trade down. It's never worth it.
They wanted Sam Dickinson.
It wasn't worth it for Caulfield. It wasn't worth it for Bouillon so far. Like, it's just, it's not worth it. This isn't the NFL. That's the best example I have.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, well, at least it's all over the X and social media. The Flyers definitely dodged a bullet, however. That one Briere move that didn't work out with Torrey Krug, who signed through 2027, who might have been the second version of Ryan Ellis, because it looks, his career's over, and they say he's just getting back to
Ryan
normal.
Ellis, Mike Rathje, there's guys.
Yeah, piriformis syndrome.
I remember one time I was covering, I was going to see a young player play at the skate zone, and actually Danny Briere's kid was playing there, so I remember talking to Danny, and I was sitting next to somebody. I look over, it's Mike Rathje. He's just, I was like, oh, I guess he's still in town because he's still getting paid.
Well, so is Brizgalov. He's in the stands from time to time, from what I understand.
Yeah, he's getting paid well in that uncapped world.
No, he was during the cap.
No.
Yeah.
I thought he was just before the cap.
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
I thought it was
absolutely.
before the cap too.
He was post cap.
It was just before the cap.
The cap kicked in in 2007, right?
Was it 07 or 08?
Yeah.
No, actually, I thought I got to look. Let's see.
Yeah. So while we're doing that, we already talked about how Matvei didn't make the Calder finalists. That's okay. I think, guys, I think he's going to use that as motivation. And I think in the long run, it's probably best. I think Hudson earned it. He was going to win it. So if Matvei wasn't going to win it, this is probably better to motivate him this summer.
I don't think Matvei Michkov needs any motivation. From what
Right.
I've seen, he is one of the most self-motivated athletes that we've seen in Philadelphia in a long time. So I don't think he needs that motivation. It was a little disappointing for me not to see him on that list of finalists. I think all told, there were 4 really good rookies, right? With Dustin Wolf in net, and Celebrini's a better all-around player than Michkov, and Lane Hudson, had a phenomenal year, and he's a phenomenal.
Isaiah's right, because I was thinking in my head, did it start right after the lockout? It did. So that made that even worse. Sorry, Dan.
No, it's fine. So, I don't think he needs any extra motivation. I think we just need to get him a center if my plan for Connor McDavid next summer falls apart. But
well, Bill Meltzer was talking about it now. You got Bill. I think you infected Bill with that virus of
the McDavid?
Yeah.
I think that everyone in the NHL would love to have Connor McDavid, right? I think that from what I've heard, there are folks in the Flyers front office who are like, we are going to do everything possible we can if this guy makes it to free agency to, get this guy on the Flyers. They want to make a huge splash. They want to bring the Flyers back to relevancy. And what better way to do that than McDavid? Obviously, he may re-sign in Edmonton. All this.
People have told me that's what they believe will happen.
That he's going to re-sign in Edmonton. Yeah, I think that's the likeliest scenario. But, let us dream a little bit.
Sure, you could dream. Absolutely.
There's no other path for the Flyers fans of getting a guy like that, because I don't think anyone they take this year in the draft is going to turn into that.
No, but Gavin McKenna is a tremendous player. Like Gavin McKenna.
But I think that it seems to me that the Flyers are intent on at least improving their team for next year, and they're we'd have to get lucky.
But look, you know what's funny about hockey, Dan? They were intent on that this year, and it didn't happen. So if they're in the same boat next year, and they're in that same lottery, and it's Gavin McKenna is better than Macklin Celebrini. Like that would be a hell of a pickup.
Yeah, I think they were maybe a little more intent on not being
intent is great as they were last year. But sometimes things don't work out. How's the goaltending? Is the goaltending going to be fixed?
Well, that's the thing about this offseason. We figure they got to add a professional center and a goaltender, and that might be the extent of what they're capable of doing.
Yeah, the thing is, the free agent goalie market's not great. So, I know everybody always fell back on, hey, are you going to, trade for Gibson? Well, Anaheim's getting a new coach, and Anaheim's going to compete in a year or two. I don't think he's going anywhere now. So I don't think that's a likely scenario. So then who are you talking about? Are you talking about David Rittich or Jake Allen, or who are you talking about?
It's brutal. It's a brutal market out there.
Yeah, that's a tough.
You might make a slight upgrade. Like David Rittich, you can make an argument is a slight upgrade, but you're paying Fedotov all this money. It's like, you think Rittich is going to come to the Flyers for $1.5 million when Fedotov's making 3.2? Probably not.
Yeah, they make it
doesn't matter what he made
in the minors, so that's the thing.
Yeah, but Fedotov's already said, I guess I'll have to go to the minors if that's what they say. And so sure, you could force him down there. But again, then you're creating another situation like you had this year with Kolosov, who should be helping the Phantoms right now, but he's not.
Well, but he didn't want to. He
didn't want to. Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's always a good thing for the organization. You guys do it without me. I only care about the NHL.
A kid that young, that immature, you have to wonder what his agent said to him. I really don't know what else to say. Russian players have this bias, and they're told this by the people who run the leagues, that the AHL is an inferior league to the KHL, and it's almost like an insult to be.
And that's AHL. The way they take it. So that's why I always say to Flyers fans, hey, Zabragin may be your guy, but he's going to give you the same spiel Fedotov just did. I came here to be the starter. I came
but
here
he's
to
not
be
going
in
to
the
be
NHL.
29 and basically, when it's going to be more comparable to what we saw from Sorokin or Shesterkin, hopefully, with Zavragin than it's going to be with
maybe.
Fedotov, who unfortunately missed his moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe, but the idea is when he comes, like, that's it. Like, if even Bjarnason, if he looks good, it's going to be like, all right, I'll be a tandem, but I'm not doing anything else. And he might not even come if he's not, like, feeling like he could be the number one. So, like, it's still, like, you have that problem with Russian goalies for sure.
Well, if the guy's good
And he's
enough,
a good one, don't get me wrong, but
yeah,
there's still a lot that could happen between, then and now.
oh, well, believe me, we know it. That's for sure.
You're witnessing it.
Yeah, and witnessing it with notable exceptions for 50 plus years. But next time they step into the building, it will be called the Xfinity Mobile Arena, which is just just a layover until the new building comes. That they were just out negotiated by the Sixers for that new building.
I mean, let me ask you. We'll just do a raise of hands here. Who here had Comcast mobile back in the day? I did for a couple of years. See, Chef did.
Yeah.
To me, this is just another incarnation of that. So it's like, okay.
Yeah, they're just biding their time till the new building comes in. And maybe that's when they make their big free agent play. Who knows? Who knows where they're going to be? But I really do think that those are going to be two targets for the Flyers, and somehow,
I
some
think
way.
center for sure. It's hard to get one. They're not going to get a guy like Marner if he hits the market. They're not getting anybody like that, even if they have the money. Those guys aren't coming yet. Like, that's just the reality.
Probably like a Monahan kind of facsimile, like a Sean Monahan, a guy who was his rebound, getting his career together, and he'll be good for the group kind of player.
Right. Yeah, they definitely could get that. I still think they may get a defenseman because you can't count on what Risto is going to be anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got Helge Grans now.
Helge Grans has to get signed. Like, Helge Grans, that's the funny thing. I've been talking about him for 3.5, 4 months because I didn't understand why they just are sort of leaving that contract out there. I had to sign him already. Like, when they signed Gaucher, I would have signed Helge Grans way before that goal that everybody saw in Lehigh, and then decided, oh, Helge Grans, yeah, maybe we should keep him. Like, they should keep him, but I don't know. He's going to probably have some options now. So, they didn't sign him. And so that's the thing. He's up after this year.
Well, he's after this year, you're saying, well, he's an RFA. He's not a UFA.
Well, so if he's an RFA, then they had one more year with him. But I thought, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Age-wise, he might still be an RFA. So you got 1 year of Helge Grans, but I would have negotiated with him already because I don't know what they're going to do with him. They might trade him.
Well, I mean, with the injury, he's an RFA.
Yeah.
And he's, with the injury to Risto, he's really going to get a look, I would imagine.
You would hope.
That would be my hope. Goes out to like January. So, yeah.
I know.
December, January, yeah. So.
But again, they may pick up a veteran defenseman to throw in that lineup for their new coach. Don't discount that. I know you don't want that, but don't discount that. That's the way this league is.
Yeah, I got you. Chef?
So you said the C word. So I want to one of the desponding things that was in one of the fan questions, and it comes from Brian and it comes from Dan too. Well, the calm-headed question was, who are the leading candidates for the Flyers coaching staff next season? So, and the other one that was not so calm was the last passionate Flyers team we had was coached by Laviolette in 2010. He dug everything he could out of the good hockey team that they had at the time to get them to a 6th game of the Cup. He was then fired after the next year after, obviously.
And was very bitter for many, many years after that. When he would come into that building, he didn't even want to interview with the Philly media because he was so mad about how that went down.
Yeah. So the question then, why not grab him as a coach to come back? He's a proven –
No.
I don't think – I'm just telling you. These are
I
questions.
agree.
Yeah.
He's a closer.
It's a big fat no.
Yeah. I suspect that as well, too.
You might get a bump this year, but the bump might not even get you into the playoffs. And then second year Laviolette's terrible.
Yeah, and they don't play defense after a while. They just –
Yeah.
I
mean, it's a proven thing. Go look up what his record is, winning percentage is second year. It's under 500.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
I agree with you. I don't
When
think
he got
he's
fired,
that kind of guy.
he was a dead man walking when they brought him back.
Especially because of the players too. Like, players didn't like what was happening there, and that didn't help either. But it wasn't all on Peter Laviolette.
Yeah,
no,
obviously too. Then then who are the leading candidates? Do we think that are still left? Because did we see over the week that Carl took himself out of the running? Right. The past week, So,
he was never going to be a guy.
I didn't think so either. And Sullivan went to New York, which I'm not upset about. I think he was too similar.
Yeah, the Western Michigan coach, Pat, and I forget how to pronounce his last name.
Ferschweiler. Ferschweiler was in for an interview.
He's been interviewed. Look, I think he's a pretty good coach. I don't know if that's the way I would go. I certainly would interview Tocchet. Now Tocchett's back on TV, so now if you interview him, they should have interviewed Tocchet before he went back to TV.
Yeah.
Because now that he's on TV, he might start dropping stuff about who he's interviewing with or whatever by mistake, whatever, because they usually get these guys talking on the panel. So I would have interviewed him before the TV thing. Now it's kind of like, does Rick Tocchet really want to coach, or is he just waiting for a big paycheck, or does he want to be on TV and just get paid by the Canucks? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know the answer to that. Joel Quenneville's out there. We know what baggage comes with him, but we also know what he's done as a coach. So
I think
you have to say his name.
I think Anaheim is, they had
They did interview him.
Yeah.
So, but he's not hired. So they certainly could interview him. Yeah. There's talk, David Quinn. David Quinn was a good teacher. Did he kind of get screwed in New York? Yeah, he did. I know a guy that, was very friendly with him, would talk to him all the time. And David Quinn's a good guy. He knows how to coach hockey. I like Jay Pandolfo. I do. I think Todd Nelson's good. Todd Nelson, though, you have to wait until probably, after this series with the Phantoms, if they do things right, or you might have to wait longer. Yeah. So, you got to see how that goes. So that could be a strategy. Who else?
Oh, Jay McKee was mentioned by, what is it?
Jay McKee, Jay McKee's worthy of consideration for sure. I remember hearing Luke Richardson's name. I don't know if that's still out there or not.
Well, he was a hot candidate, and then he had a family issue.
Correct.
And then he came back, and then he coached Chicago at a hopeless situation.
Right.
Yeah.
They were totally tanking.
Nobody would hold that against them.
Yeah.
No, but that's a guy that definitely could coach and teach and all of that. So I think there's a possibility of that.
And Brad Shaw, it came out today. Kevin Kurz put out a piece that kind of hinted that he might actually be in the lead.
Yeah.
He might be.
Yeah, my question would be my next question. If the guy, you don't think the guy's out there now, and you think that maybe something's available next year, I'm just going to bring back up to what Briere and Jonesy both said. They're not going to sign Mr. Who's available right now. They want to sign a player that is the best player for what they're looking for, not the best available one. And I think that pertains to coaches now. So is it possible that maybe, Brad Shaw is just like a bridge coach? We always say it with contracts in between. So, and I would not have any problem with it, given what
I don't think anybody would. I think
provided the team already. I think
he's definitely in there. And I think it's a situation where they have to see what's out on the landscape. And then you have to ask yourself, is Brad better than some of these first-time coaches that are under consideration if they are? Brad knows these guys. He's good. I think even though he did change things up from the way when Torts was there, I think he was trying to be nice to the players and let them have an open system to kind of fill the year with some offense, close it out that way. And I feel like that's why he did that. He's certainly a smart guy. So you have to ask that question. So even if they sign him to a 2-year deal, you let Brad be the coach. If somebody who's a great coach all of a sudden gets fired mid-season or gets fired at the end of the season, there's your candidate. So you do have to consider that.
Yeah, definitely. Dan, you want to weigh in on the Flyers coaching situation?
Like I talked about, Briere, just the whole thing's so close to the vest. I mean, people thought that Tocchet was a shoo-in, and I've had people tell me that they think that Brad Shaw is more of a, he's a much better assistant coach, this is what people have said to me, that Bradshaw would be a much better assistant coach because he's detail oriented. He likes to get into the weeds, and he doesn't really, he's not good at coming up to above the clouds and kind of viewing everything. But
we don't know that yet. Everything else you said is true, but that part we don't know.
Right. So what I was going to say was we don't know that yet, right? So
okay, sorry.
Maybe he would be an interesting, option as potential head coach. Is like you mentioned, Russ, is maybe Tocchet more interested in being on TV, and so he sort of spurned the Flyers' offers. How were their discussions with Hirschweiler? There's a lot of interesting things. I mean, for me, I think the most important thing is Bradshaw sticks around. If it's as an assistant coach or as the head coach, I wouldn't mind seeing what he can do as a head coach if the Flyers aren't blown away by any of these other options, because I think he's a very genuine person. I think the players get along.
Oh, there's no question he's genuine. Yeah.
Whether or not, he would be a good head coach, I think we don't know yet. But I'd kind of be interested in seeing if he is, because it's not like next year Stanley Cup or bust for this team, right?
Yeah.
And if they elevate Bradshaw to the head coach and it doesn't work out, okay, well, you can go back to the drawing board and there will be other coaches available. But for me, I kind of wouldn't mind seeing what Bradshaw has to offer as a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many vacancies out there that it makes it hard. What would they add? 3 more vacancies got added, by the time that season was over, or a couple of weeks.
It was up to 8 or 9 at one point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, who knows? Shaw could be like Thompson for the Phillies.
Right.
Comes in and now all of a sudden he's a guru. And it's like, well, Phillies ain't showing that right now, but I think early. No,
but I mean, but it's a fair point.
Yeah.
It's a fair point. Like what Dan said, it's a good strategy in the sense that you keep interviewing, and unless you feel, and every time you go back to everybody else and say, do you think that's better than Brad? And if it's not, you don't bother interviewing that guy again. Yeah. Like that's the way that should be the standard. We have to bring in someone who we feel is better than Brad, because if not, we got Brad.
Absolutely. Yeah, that could be their bias right now. Definitely. So we're watching the Lehigh Valley Phantoms in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that, touch on that. Who should the fans be paying attention to outside of Lutsenko and Bonk and, not Bonk, I'm sorry, Bump.
Alex Bump, yeah.
There's so many B's, Barkey,
Yeah. Yeah, who's Jacob Gaucher's playing well. Anthony Richard's starting to pick it up. Both those guys are picking it up. Emile Andre, remember him? Mm-hmm. He's doing well. All those guys are definitely worthy of watching. Right now, this is the best they've played all year, because they have a different team now.
Yeah.
And, and Bump and Lutsenko are playing together. That's good. Is Lutsenko showing as much as I think he should? No, but he's picking it up a little bit. And, Bump's shooting like an MFer out there, but, he's got to learn. It's not all going to drop.
He's got Gautier disease.
Yeah. So it's like, that's something that will come with a little time. But their defense is definitely better. And the goaltending now, though, with Gahagan hurt.
Yeah, Gahagan's hurt.
That's a little bit of a worry. If he plays next game, great, because he's got 4 or 5 days to rest up. That helps. But that's a little bit of a worry,
Yeah. So are you seeing anything where you say to yourself, yeah, I mean, it's good that this is elevated and they're against Hershey. So this is this is about as good as it's going to get for the AHL. How do you
I think Laval would be, to be fair.
Yeah.
Laval's
okay. Yeah, that's true.
I'm seeing with Bump after, I think he was running on some adrenaline and some cockiness coming off the NCAA and the title and all that. And now he's dealing with some tight checking and some, adult bodies he's running into. And it kind of, to me, the people that think that Bump is going to come right in training camp and win a job, that might be a little premature.
It's a little premature. I would, if you want to leave that opportunity open to get the best out of the kid, sure. Don't let him hit a wall. Just send him down to the AHL. That's where he belongs for next year, because he's got to learn, that next level of hockey. I don't even think about him making the team. I don't even think Jet Lutsenko should make the team.
It's just a shame with that rule that he can't play in the AHL, Lutsenko.
I know. But it's like, you don't want to see what happened to Shane Wright happen with Jet Lutsenko, where they start playing him, then they don't play him, then,
the yo-yo, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to see that for the kid. I would rather send him back. I hope he gets traded. I would think that would be the best thing for him. Don't make him make the team because you're so weak at center that he has to make the team. Because that's what almost happened this year, and it wouldn't have been good. Because you saw what happened. He had his whole season, and then when he came to the AHL at the beginning, he started to struggle. Now he's picked it up a little bit. But even if he looks good over the summer and he's got muscles and he comes into camp, he's got to develop. Let him develop.
Yeah, his shot and looking for his shot and just being more well-rounded offensively.
Yeah, he's not shooting enough right now. He's just not. And so those things are going to come with a little bit of time here. You got to give him that time. Look at what Shane Wright has gotten with that time. He ended up winning a championship in the AHL. He came up this year. What do you have, like 40 points, something like that, 44 points? Like all of a sudden, like nobody talks about, like they're nobody's worried about Shane Wright anymore.
Yeah, I know he had a better year. I'm actually looking that up. Just the Stanley Cup players. I picked Colorado and Tampa Bay. That's what a genius I was. So anybody rejiggered or Dallas, Florida.
Yeah, 44 points. Good guess.
Do you remember what my pick was, Isaiah? I filled out a bracket somewhere, I think. I'm pretty sure I had Dallas in the finals, and I might have had Toronto might have been my other team that I had in the finals potentially.
I could tell you this. I thought Colorado could go all the way. I thought Winnipeg could go all the way. Like those are two teams I thought could go all the way. And Winnipeg was a nail biter in that first one, but maybe they cleared a mental hurdle. I thought Colorado was going to beat Dallas. I was wrong, but look, it went to 7 and more than a period to prove that. So we knew a good team was going to go home in that one. Look, I think the Leafs are much better. I can't tell you they're definitely beating Florida. And now you got Joseph Wall in net, who I think is a good goalie, but this is against Florida. They're going to do every dirty trick they can. If you think they were dirty with Solars the other night, wait till you see what they do with Joseph Wall. Like everybody, that's the other thing. I mean, I know I'm off topic with the Flyers here, but
it is a topic.
Go for it.
We've all watched hockey for a very long time. I'm older than all of you. Maybe, I'm older than you, Shep. I'm willing to bet that. And
I'm the oldest here.
Okay, 65. I'm over that. I'm not even saying what I am anymore, but I'm well over that. But the point is, we've seen players all go hard to the net. Like they all do it. And so like I felt like with Stolarz, and I felt, what Chris Pronger said was actually correct. The shot off the head, well, not off the head, but they hit him in the mask. Yeah. Was definitely the shot that was a problem to start. And Corey Schneider talked about it on NHL Network, and he said when you get the mask knocked off you like that, your chin your jaw gets pushed in, and we know that that's a trigger sometimes for a concussion. So then after that the connection with Bennett, which I don't think was completely on like people are like, oh, it's a chicken wing, or he did. I don't think it was like that. I think it was just he's going to the net and stuff happens. It's the same way I didn't think Chris Kreider tried to injure and take out Carey Price out of the playoffs, but everybody goes hard to the net. That's just my basic point. Goalies know this. Goalies sometimes hit guys in the back with their sticks. Ron Hextall, Billy Smith, Jordan Binnington. Sometimes they're punching guys because this is what happens. I always say this to fans. You can't expect the refs to bail out your team with calls like that in the playoffs, because for the most part, the refs are not going to make those calls in the playoffs.
Well, and Stolarz was whacking at some people in the first round anyway, and he didn't get a single penalty for it.
No, actually, there could have been a time where he could have gotten 3 penalties. I remember that.
It was within like 15 seconds too. It's like, and then what do you call it? Gets the guy he was whacking, I forget who it was, gets called for interference.
Right.
It blew my mind. I'm like, okay.
That's what I'm saying. This is like playoff hockey. Goalies know this. You're never going to hear Stolarz complain about it. Do we all feel bad? Yeah, because we like the guy. I mean, I always liked him. I think the comeback that he made this year is incredible, because I wasn't sure he was really a number one, but he was starting to make me at least think about it, and now he's hurt. So, who knows? But will the Leafs make the Stanley Cup? They could. I wouldn't pick them to, but they could.
It's still hard to pick against Florida right now. And that other series is if you have trouble, any kind of insomnia, just put on Carolina.
No, that game, I said on Off the Post, I basically was like, I hated myself for watching that game. Like it was not a good use of time. And, then like Anthony gets on me because it's like, you have to cover it. You're a journalist. I'm like, I don't have to. I have choices. And I made a bad choice. Like, so will I be watching all of Winnipeg, Dallas? Yeah, because I think Winnipeg might beat them. I know everybody's starting to pick Dallas, but I'm like, hey, Connor Hellebuck showed up for like 4 or 5 periods there and really helped him out. They might get Scheifele back. He started skating. That'd be a big, I know Robertson's getting back for Dallas. I don't think Morrissey's getting back for Winnipeg, but Winnipeg, they could be that team like the Leafs were, where it's like, we have to get past the first round. Once we get past the first round, we're feeling pretty good. We'll see. I mean, it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, if their goaltender wakes up, that's a game changer. It's not like
and I voted Hellebuck for the Hart. So if people want to throw arrows at me, they can. He was my number 1 for the Hart.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I don't, I'm not going to make a new pick, but yeah, it's interesting playoffs. Just avoid that one series, unless of course you're having a.
Listen, I picked Edmonton. Originally, I picked the Kings over Edmonton because I'm like, maybe the Kings can sting them. Maybe they could finally prove me wrong because I was kind of like wishy-washy with them all year. They didn't. But then I said, and some people don't go with me on this, but I know that Pietrangelo was out for a game. But even before that, I feel like in the game, Vegas's defensemen slow down. Yeah. I feel like their big defense does slow down, and I feel like that's Edmonton's chance because they got some very fast skaters, as you know, with Draisaitl and Connor McDavid and such, and even Connor Brown's a hell of a skater. Those kinds of guys, I don't think Vegas all the way through their defense is equipped for that. And I'm not telling you Edmonton's great because, Cal Pickard's in net. Then I always go back to the Hamburglar. Like, did any of us think he was going to win the amount of games he won? Or Michael Leighton? I know I brought up Michael Leighton. Now some people will be like, breaking their computer. But, like, nobody thought Michael Leighton was going to do anything. Like, how could you? So, I don't know. Maybe, Cal Pickard's undefeated. Like, he's 5-0. He even looked like he was going to lose that game because Mark Stone scores the first 2 goals. But Cal Pickard's undefeated.
Well,
yes,
I wouldn't want to be.
Agree? He's 5-0. We're all on board.
He's 5-0. He's 5-0. That's yeah.
Right. I know. Like, what do you say about that?
The bubble's going to burst. That's what I'll say. Anyway, so Russ, I think we're going to leave it there. I appreciate so much that you came by. You got a lot on your plate right now.
I do.
Yeah, you do. You got Locked On Flyers, Off the Post, Sportsology.com, and of course, Game Winners. You got to go to Amazon if you haven't done that.
Appreciate that.
You'll love the book. You'll love the book. You write good books.
There's a lot. Listen, there's a lot of Flyers stuff in that book. I mean, there's some goals in there that were pretty important in NHL history.
Yep, no, I agree. Except for Bob Clark's game number.
I know everybody's got one. Everybody has one that's not in the book. There's no question about it.
No,
it's
a great book. You should check it out. So I appreciate you coming on. And is there anything else you want to tell? You got a new book you're working on, a new project?
No, stop making my workload worse.
Right.
No, I don't have any new books. I'm not thinking about any new books. It doesn't mean somebody won't call me and say, hey, you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, okay. No, just NHL Draft Buzz. I'm going to maybe do some things with Hockey Hot Stove too, but Off the Post is on Hockey Hot Stove. So I wish those guys the best. Sportsology.com will be at the NHL Draft. A lot of media won't be this year, but we will be. And so that's something. I'll be there with SiriusXM for their draft coverage and all that. And that'll be my 21st draft, 2001. No, more than that. 25th draft, something like that. Who knows?
No.
A lot of drafts, man.
Fantastic. You're a busy man. You want to keep up with Russ at Sportsology on Blue Sky and, of course, X. And I appreciate having you on tonight, Russ. Hope to have you on again very soon.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Have me on after the combine. I'll give you some insight on that.
You got it.
Excellent.
Thanks, Russ.
Take care.
See ya.
Bye-bye. Okay, so gents, yeah, Russ had a lot to say about the Flyers tonight and things in general. Just before we gave a final statement, I did want to acknowledge the passing of Ed Van Imp, who just recently died at age 84. Ed was an original Flyer, a real defensive stalwart for the Bullies era Flyer teams that won the Cup and went again in 76. And there's a very, very well-liked guy. And so we want to pass our condolences to Ed Van Ant's family.
The Flyers'
passing it.
second ever captain.
Yeah. After Lou
captain
Angotti.
number
Yeah,
2.
right before Bob Clark. Yeah. Okay, so let's get some last statements in. Dan, any final words for the fans tonight?
Not really. Just watch these playoffs. It's been really great. That last second goal with Winnipeg against St. Louis was it's incredible how quickly the tides can change. I mean, imagine being a St. Louis Blues fan. You're up 2 goals with a minute and a half left in Game 7, and all of a sudden it's tied. You're going to overtime, and now your season's over. So it's pretty incredible. NHL playoff hockey is about as good as it gets. I'm rooting for Scott Lawton, so I hope that Toronto can continue their Game 1 success. But just enjoying the playoff hockey, and we'll look forward to seeing what Flyers news we get.
Fantastic. And people can follow you at DSilver88.
Correct.
You got it. Chef?
All right. I will bring up at the beginning of the season, because I looked it up and I figured I listened to one of our old shows, and but we both had Dallas and the Rangers in the cup, me and you, Isaiah. And that didn't come to fruition. That's not even close to fruition.
No, that's 2 years ago. This season.
I thought it was.
Oh, no, wait a minute. Yeah, you might be right.
Beginning of the season, yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
And then Dan had the Stars. And I thought he said, I could be wrong, but I thought he said the Washington Capitals. So no, it was one of those other teams.
I would not have picked the Caps in the finals. I would not have picked the Caps in the finals. I think I picked either Dallas against Florida or Dallas against
Toronto. It might have been Florida because but anyway, I mean, we're still in the mix. We had a decent amount with Florida. So, but I will say this, it's the playoffs have been fun. It's great. And my one thing is I will pose this question to everybody out there is, please lock up Tyson Forster. Please don't let him go to offer sheets. I think after his Canadian run here with Team Canada, I think that if he has a really good Team Canada run here in the Worlds, that we'll probably have him locked up before the end of that series, before the end of the whole thing there, because I think he could just showing, right? If he has a good showing. And if you want to argue with me about stuff, you can find me at Chef DeLeppe on Twitter.
Okay.
I mean, X, whatever.
Yeah, well, everybody calls it whatever. And you can follow us, the O&B Puckcast, on the X or Blue Sky at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck. We're also on the Renegade platform Getter at O&B Puckcast, at O&B Puckcast. You can follow the O&B Puckcast also on several podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeart, TuneIn, and Amazon Audible. And of course, we're on YouTube and Facebook. Just type O&B Puckcast in and it'll pop right up for you. If you could follow or subscribe, whatever applies to your platform, we really do appreciate it. It helps move us up the charts when people are looking for Philadelphia Flyer podcast. So that's all we have for you tonight. Until next time, everybody, thanks for listening. And check us out on hockeyhotstove.com. And we're also linked on, of course, flyersnittygritty.com. And take care. Hey, everybody, it's Isaiah, just reminding you about Jim's South Street, 400 South Street in Philadelphia, PA. They're back. That's right. After the fire, they've returned. And now you have, in the 40-year tradition of Philly cheesesteaks, Jim's South Street down on 400 South Street in Philly. If you're down there, check it out. The finest cheesesteaks, hoagies, and fries in the grandest Philadelphia tradition. You know you want one. And if you're down there, if you live down there, of course, you can use Grubhub or DoorDash, whatever it takes. Jim's South Street, 400 South Street in Philadelphia. They're back. Get one soon.